What's up, y'all? This is your man Chuck, sometimes referred to as So Chuckified. I guess we'll keep it casual like that, but I'll leave my name as Chuck on the screen so as not to take up real estate. So, this is the official episode 2 of Work No Filter. And if you missed the first episode of co founder of Meta Performance, Michael Seiler, I would encourage you to go back and look at that. He drops a lot of nuggets on performance and what it means to perform. But today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm not lying about that. We are talking about overlooked talent. Interesting, interesting. Overlooked talent. We hear these sob stories about the talent shortage, and we're going to find out real quick from somebody that knows what's up and has a passion for looking at talent that already exists in an organization. So, without further ado, welcome Diane Bailey Boulet. Hey,
Hey,
Diane.
Chuck. Great to see you again.
Yeah, no doubt. I know we caught up, I don't know, it was about a month ago, and we had coffee, and you caught me up with what you've got going on in your world. I didn't realize you were a published author, so many things. And, it's really funny how our networks work.
Yeah,
When you spend time outside of the professional setting and, chopping it up with people, you learn so much about them as a human being. So that was really cool.
thank you. And it's just great to see you again because it's been a while and I always had such a, high regard for you as a colleague. So it's
Well,
great to see you.
I really appreciate that. And that same goes for you as well. I know that we dealt with some projects together and we also dealt with leaders together and
Hmm.
all those kinds of things, how your worlds kind of intermingle when you're in the corporate world. But I want to just go ahead and ask you, tell us a little bit, just a snippet about yourself, and kind of where you're coming from as far as work no filter is concerned.
Sure. Diane Bailey Boulet, and I've spent my career in helping people get out of their own way and grow and become the best versions of themselves professionally and in their lives, aligned to goals and to just ways of being. I'm a coach and I'm a communication consultant background, and I spent a lot of time in leadership development and around mentoring strategy for a Fortune 50 healthcare company, among many other things. I'm also the author of the book you mentioned, which is Poverty to Possibilities. Right here, snapshots from a Yorkshire boyhood, and it's a purpose and passion project for me.
Oh, I love that. I've always fancied myself as someone that would write a book, and then I dig into it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like crushing stress to think. I mean, so did you type this book or did you write longhand? Some people do both.
Both. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, I would type it, but sometimes,
Hmm.
for me, the flow sometimes was better on a pad of paper. And I
Hmm.
remember once reading about the author Edith Wharton, and that they always used to show pictures of her sitting at a desk writing, and I turned out that she used to lie in bed and write. And honestly, I've sat in the living room couch writing my
Hmm.
book. I've sat at a desk doing it, and yeah, I've sat in bed with a pad of paper writing it too. So
Oh, I love that. Do you keep
yeah.
like a little like sheet if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have like this grand brainstorm idea?
Well, I do have a little Kentucky mint julep cup on my bedside table full of pens, and I have little pieces of paper, and mainly that's so that I don't think, in the middle of the night, oh, I have this idea, and I'm afraid I'm going to forget it, and then I'll like stress
Mm.
out about it. So I'll literally write it in the dark. I don't turn the lights on. I just write it, and it's a mess. But the next morning, I look at it and go, oh yeah, I know what that was. So
I love that. You should do a post about that and show us one of those scrawled notes. I love that.
yeah.
That's super amazing. So let's talk about this subject, this idea of overlooked talent. And I have a two-part question. First is why are you or what inspired your
Hmm.
focus on overlooked talent? And then are we really looking at a talent shortage? Or are we looking at a problem that is untapped talent or blind spots? What would you
Mm.
say is the issue?
Well, let's go with that second question first. I think it's a little bit of
Hmm.
of a combination. It's not just one thing or another. So it's I think you mentioned 3 things. Yeah. And then in terms of what got me to this point, I had been working as a consultant based in Massachusetts, in Boston. And when my dad passed away 20 years ago, I decided to go back to his village in England where he grew up, which was a coal mining community, the most polluted community in all of Britain at the time because of all the
Oh,
industrial
wow.
activity there, and learn like who was this person who became my father, who was this child who became my father. And in the process of doing that, I tracked down some family members I'd never met before. And then I tracked down my dad's childhood friends, many of whom had gone on to be coal miners and steel workers when he went on to be a doctor at a Harvard teaching hospital and a US Navy captain. And that got me really thinking. These men I met were very bright. Some of them would send me letters that were beautiful penmanship, incredibly thoughtful letters. And I thought, what is this? These
Mhm.
men in a different time and place would have been having more choices in their life about what they did. I always say there's nothing wrong with being a coal miner or a steel worker, except if it's the only choice you're given. And
Mm.
so that started me on looking at people differently. Not differently. I think my dad had always raised me a certain way to look at all people as having gifts and talents, and my parents, I should say. But that was maybe the kind of crucible experience of doing that and literally going down a coal mine and as part of my research and going, oh my God, we sent so many people underground with no choices really about that. It's like you're born in this place and this is where you belong, and there are not a lot of options for you. And that's where I got intrigued by this is overlooked talent. This is the hidden gold in a society, in an organization. And then from there, I've been paying attention a lot more to that ever since.
Yeah, and I'll definitely want to talk about that mining here
Mhm.
shortly. But so you talk a little bit about traditional definitions of talent and how they limit organizations, right? So when did you learn that best hire and best potential are different bets in
Ooh,
business?
yeah, right. So, a lot of hiring processes still unfortunately can fall into some biases, preconceived notions of, where did you go to school, um where are you from, what do you sound like, what do you look like, um are you from the country, are you from the city, are you from the suburbs, who do you know, in the networks. And I have to say I was working in an organization many years ago where the CEO had a bias against hiring anyone who wasn't from certain schools, colleges.
Mm,
And I found working with people who didn't necessarily go to those schools, I just came across a lot of people who just had innate talent. I'm like, how could we not think of hiring them, right?
right.
Just because of something you know, as narrow as like, did you go to this place or that place? Did you know my
Where'd you go to
friends?
high school?
Yeah, where'd you go to high school? What do you sound like? And the sound like piece is interesting because there's been a lot of research in the United Kingdom, for example, and this always intrigues me related to my book about regional accents and regional biases around accent and
Mm,
assuming intelligence or lack of it, based on
right.
certain kind of like very surface things. Um, so it's just a really interesting topic for me. It's like, who are we overlooking because of the way we think about these things? And we all have certain biases, and that goes in every direction. Everyone has that. So, but
Yeah.
let's also look at this idea that talent is actually equally distributed, but opportunity isn't always. And how can we kind of widen that?
Yeah, and that has a sense of inclusion there that I
Mhm.
think is very, very important, um, and really resonates, right? Um, Personally, for myself, and the reason I'm really excited about talking about this is I've experienced the overlooked talent
Mhm.
many times, being passed over or whatnot, and I'm not salty about that at all.
Mhm.
No, I'm kidding. Uh,
Ah,
but one of
yeah.
the things, yeah, right. So one of the things that some people might not know about me is I got my start as a temporary worker at Blue
Mhm,
Cross and Blue Shield working on the loading dock.
mhm.
That was how I got started in healthcare. I then
It's a
moved
great
into
start.
the mailroom. I then moved into subrogation. And mind you, I will say this for those listening out there, I didn't have a degree.
Mhm,
I was working on my degree.
mhm,
And one of the things that really helped me was that I had a leader. This lady ran the mail operations at Blue Cross and Blue Shield 30 some odd years ago,
mhm.
30, 31. And she saw something in me. And thankfully, she saw something in me that was this guy's talented.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's something about him
Mhm.
that brings something to the table. So, when was the last time you saw a mailroom get mined? So, not actually a mailroom, but where you were able to spot talent
Mhm.
that other people missed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a specific person, but it's just, in any interaction or anything that you have kind of seen over your career. What is it that
Yeah.
allows you to get those sharp,
You
focus?
know, I'm gonna share a story that is not firsthand to me, but one that still sticks with me. Several years ago, I went to a winery in upstate New York, and there was a man there who was originally hired as the janitor for a college or some
Hmm.
organization nearby. And it
Hmm.
turned out he actually had a lot of knowledge about something that was really important, which was he convinced them that they could actually have a successful wine industry in northern New York, which is a cold climate for a lot of the year.
Right.
And today, the New York wine industry is a great success story and an incredible story. But he basically saw the possibilities. Now, he had come as an immigrant and had lived
Hmm.
in a cold climate where he had witnessed this, people making good wine in a cold climate. But he brought that know how. But imagine he's there, he's the janitor, but he
Right.
got somebody's attention with his idea, and that person didn't just blow him off and say, oh, what do you know, right? You
Hmm.
don't have the right credentials to know this, right? But he actually
Hmm.
did, and he knew something. And not only that, it turned into an incredibly successful story for the region, and now those wines are very respected in the wine world. I think that's fair to say, actually.
Hmm.
And whereas back at the time, it was sort of like if you said New York wine, people would go, ooh, but it was
Who drinks
because of
that?
one person who was, like I said, he was the janitor, and he had a vision of what was possible there. And then, I know there's a CEO of a company I worked with that started in the mailroom and became CEO. And, so again, these things,
That's
the thing
right.
is, I think about this concept of meta leadership, which is, leading from wherever you are. And it doesn't necessarily matter I'm not against credentials. I'm all for that. But I also would
Hmm.
say that's not enough. If you're looking to say where are the best ideas coming from, where are the most varied experiences that might bring new sort of blades to the Swiss Army knife that make an organization a great Swiss Army knife, um, who are they and where are they and what are they doing that is maybe not the usual way of doing things, but that could be the breakthrough that brings an organization real, new levels of success.
Right. One of the things for me in my career that I feel like there's overlooked talent is one, the sheer amount of work that, I don't know if you would consider director level middle management, but the sheer amount of work that they have to manage with the people
Mhm.
and the disconnect between the work and the people,
Mhm.
it's very hard for someone to really have that connection to see those things that you're talking about that possibly get overlooked.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what the fix is for that, but, um, what are some practical mindsets for leaders,
Mm.
right, that help them spot hidden talent? they're overrun with work, they're overrun
Yeah.
with all this other stuff. What do you look for?
You
How do
know,
you hone
there's
that?
this yeah, there's this expression when you see something, say something, which sometimes is related to some, like not so great things, like if there's a problem, see something, say something. But I would also say as leaders, the sort of constructive, positive piece around that is if you see someone doing something that you think is noteworthy of, say something. You have no idea how that much might change the trajectory of someone's life for the better. And I'll talk about my dad's story. Again, he grew up in this mining community. Um, Everybody around him was a miner, steel worker, if they were employed at all, because there were some really tough times. But all that to say, he managed to get into a grammar school, which at the time was sort of the unusual for a child like him. And he had a teacher who said, "You are a writer."
Mm,
Now, my dad never saw himself as being a writer or as someone whose voice and point of view mattered that much.
hmm.
But I'll tell you, while my dad didn't go on to be a writer, when I was a child, I remember him saying to me, "You can write, you are a writer." And so I think what great leaders do is I know the reality of what's going on in the workplace right now is, managers are barely keeping head above water and they're struggling and organizations are struggling too. But what does it mean when you actually take the time to say to someone, "I see something in you that you may not see in yourself yet. I see the possibility here. You have something that you may not even be giving yourself credit for." And we need that kind of person in this organization and being partners to people that way.
Yeah, no doubt. And you said that so well. Um, the thing with leaders, to me personally, if I was a leader with my head barely above water, one of the things that grounds me is if I interact with someone, whether it be in a meeting, face to face, virtually, on the phone, which very rarely happens these days.
Yeah.
Um, my whole thing is trying to peel back the onion to get at the human. And I
Mhm.
know that you don't have a ton of time to do that as a leader, but really, sometimes posing a question that would help you get a little bit more insight into a person, because it's very easy for us to box people in these high
Yep.
potential lists and all of these things. They box people in.
Mhm.
um how do we get past all of the and I know this wasn't something that you had um previously shared about, but it came to my head. What can you do um, at the corporate level to not let all the process get in the way?
Mm.
I feel like we're overloaded with process that people are so hammered down they just don't see what's in front of
Yeah.
them. They
Yeah.
can't
And
see the
we know
forest for the
yeah.
trees.
And process serves a purpose, obviously, because it's how do we, kind of move things forward. But to your point, um, there's also this piece of what are the informal ways. And again, I think it
Hmm.
does. It gets to things like, I noticed this about you. You have this talent. I don't think you recognize the strength you have in yourself. You might be hiding your strengths, out of some sense of not wanting to be a bragger or something like that.
Hmm.
But I want you to see that there's something here. I think you have to just kind of squeeze it in where you can and see what's possible with that. Um,
Hmm.
I think that there are sort of high potential and things like that, and that's important. I've done a lot, as a lot of mentoring strategy related to that. Equally so, these sort of informal, maybe off script kind of conversations about just being human to each other. I see this thing about you.
Hmm.
To me, a leader is, yeah, you can have the title of leader, but leader is like also about, really bringing out the best in other people. Our jobs as leaders is to look for talent and to say, how can I help you, partner with you to be the best you can be in this and potentially even more,
Right.
environments or context in this organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a quick story. I spoke at the Bluegrass Hymns conference earlier this year, and it was on AI and whatnot. And after the section, I had a student come up to me and he was getting ready to graduate. And he was like, I really appreciated what you said, you know, would love to talk to you more about, XYZ. And I was like, okay, great. Long story short, he hit me up. We talked. He's actually going to be one of the episodes. We
Oh,
were
great.
talking about how,
Yeah.
and this really blew me away, Diane. He is a college student, and so as I was talking to him, I was like, "Hell, he'd be good to have on the show because he's starting out his career, and he wanted to talk to me about how did you get started and all this stuff." And I realized it's like, "Oh, this is really a good kid that I really want to talk to, and if I can help, help." And I said, "So why don't you come on my show? What would you like to talk about?" And he said, I mean, deadpan, mental health. And I was
Mm,
like,
yep.
wow, I've got
Yep.
goosebumps right now thinking about it. And it just blew me away, right? Because I wasn't expecting that from someone of that age. Again, those biases, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so, fast forward, he had hit me up, I guess, last week, and it had been about a month and a half, 2 months before we, reconnected again. And he was like, "I'm door dashing. Can you take a call in the car?" And I was like, "Absolutely, call
I
me.
love it.
I was just leaving fishing last night. This happened last night." And he said, "I have this idea for an app, and I'm starting my MBA with a focus in AI and all this stuff." And I was just soaking it up, right? Because I'm like,
Mm.
I remember having that where you can't even sleep. You're just like you're
Yeah,
so
you're so
into
on
that.
fire. You're so alive. That's so
Yes,
great.
yes. And so he just wanted me to, tell him how he could get started with, how would I approach to build an app. And I'm like, dude, I have no freaking clue how to build
Mhm.
an app, but I know people.
Right.
And, yeah, so I synced him up with a couple of people in my network. But the point I was getting at was, um, at the end of the day, having people that you connect with, it just builds and builds and builds. And, he was like, "Thanks for your time." And I'm like, "Dude, we're just getting started. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
cutting you
great.
loose.
Yeah.
I need you as much as you need
Yeah,
me,
you're
or you
learning from
think
each
you need
other.
me."
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
I'm
so
like, "Let me
powerful.
see. You're getting an MBA and it's a focus in AI. Dude, we're best friends. Like, I want to know all the stuff. Like, I want
That's
to know about
right.
it all. And
Well,
like, how can I amplify your voice?"
yeah. So,
So
and again, I think great leaders maybe instinctively on some levels do that. Maybe that was
thank you.
how they got where they got. A lot of times, and there is this interesting piece around network, right? Which is that
Mm,
one of the things I think leaders can do is help make sure that people in their organization do have you know ability to be part of networks and expand networks and connect with people they might not otherwise meet because of that leader's introduction and things like that. It's really important. And one of the challenges, I talk about overlooked talent. Sometimes that talent is people who maybe are the first generation person in their family to be in a professional
mm,
environment working, and they come into
that was
that
me.
environment. There's a couple of things that they have all the right credentials. They've jumped through all the hurdles to get there. But what they often don't have that their peers, who are not first generation professionals in the workplace, have is networks, and
Mm,
inherited networks often as well, sort of like through family, through different organizations that they're part of. So again, I think leaders can play a role of just being really thinking about how do I, look across this organization, as busy as I am and as much stress as everybody's under in this time of rapid transformation. What can I do today? Just little person, a thing here,
mhm.
something there, and how does that incrementally grow?
Yeah. No, that's spot on. Um, I lost my train of thought. I just took that. Um, okay. This is one that I was really interested in too. Um, all right. So, how do leaders start shifting from performance management
Mm.
to what you call possibility discovery? That's an interesting
Yeah.
words. I like
Well,
that.
so of course my book is poverty to possibility, and that's become clear to me that it's about priming the pump for possibility. So
Hmm.
I think that's really where that comes from for me. In terms of performance management, again, I think it's how a lot of organizations do that, and they create some clarity with that. But I think the other thing is it can't be the one and only way we go about this. There's just you gotta have a sort of sixth sense about people, and you've got to be able to see people again who maybe aren't on the radar of the organization but are doing something that, huh, that's interesting, what are they doing? And you talk about AI. I mean, what a time we're in right now. We don't even know where this is all going,
Yes.
right? um,
Right.
at the same time, I just want to say I've been doing a course in partnership with a Microsoft partner about coaching with and using AI in a coaching context. And that's been very interesting. Like, how can you use, for example, Microsoft Copilot as as
Yep.
a leader to do research, but also related to that, there's new tools on the Microsoft platform, and I'm not pushing Microsoft, but just that's the one I've been exposed to the
Hmm.
most, is the Microsoft Viva. And in an organization I was working with, I made it a practice most Fridays to send a message to the members of my global team to tell them what I noticed that they were doing really well. And at first I thought, oh, are they going to think this is cheesy? This is like, yeah. But I always got really positive feedback from them because they
Hmm.
felt like they were seen, that their work was being seen, and how they were showing up with our clients was being noticed and respected and admired. And I think so again, it's these little things that maybe we just take for granted, and it's easy, as I say, to get kind of caught in what needs to be done, at an organization. But people need that. And you talked about mental
Hmm.
health. Positive constructive feedback to people just in time can really alleviate a lot of anxiety and mental health challenges.
Hmm. I was sitting here listening to you, and I just sum it up. I always go back to this, right? Like you obviously have skills. You're very talented as a mentor, a coach.
Thank
I've watched you work, your learning background, all of it, like all of it. Your talent background. Um, and I know that those things play a part. But personally,
you.
we have to human better.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the thing, right? Because I know you, I know your work, I respect your work, but
Yeah.
you have the ability to connect and you can't teach that. I mean, what do
Mm,
you do when you have leaders that don't understand how to connect that way? Because I feel like that would uncover some of these diamonds in the rough, so to
yeah,
speak.
it's a really important a question, and maybe not an easy one to answer. But I do think that, you know, as much as you're scouting for talent, as leaders are scouting for talent, then we also need to be scouting for leaders who actually understand, that at the core of everything is the human experience, and that
Mhm.
is going to have an impact on how we progress, as organizations doing sometimes difficult and new things that are sort of pioneering and sort of cutting slash bleeding edge. And I think that
Right.
we're all just going through a lot of transformation, and we need to stay grounded in kindness and humanity.
No, I agree with that 100%. And it's not an easy um, business problem to solve, right?
Mm-mm. No.
It's, there's so many leaders, there's so much work, and meanwhile, that's a whole other can of worms. I'm not even going to open that up. So I want to do something
Yeah.
fun called a lightning round.
Ooh,
So
okay.
yeah, so have you done like word association type stuff before?
Yeah, we'll see how I do
Um,
this time. It's
no,
Monday
that's okay,
morning,
great. I
Chuck.
know. I'm going to throw something at
Do
every
it.
guest, right? You all know this. You
Go
come
for it.
on and you know it,
Yeah.
because you all know me. So in the lightning round, I'm going to give you a term or like a little phrase,
Mhm.
and I just want you to whatever comes to your mind.
Okay.
It could be anything, and if we have to bleep it, we'll bleep it. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Uh, all right, so there's four of them. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me give you an easy one. Culture fit.
Everything is questionable about what that means. It
All
can be
right.
a it can be all right, I just gotta say, a lot of times people say, "You need to fit." Are they a fit? And that there may be some bias in that that is problematic. I'll just leave it there.
Yep. All right. Gaps in resume.
Life happens. Be
Like
curious.
that. I love that. Side hustles.
Whatever energizes you and helps you keep growing.
Last one. My very favorite.
Okay.
Impactful.
Come in to whatever you're doing curious and looking to do no harm.
Very well done. I like those answers. You did
The
well
pressure,
being
the
put on the
pressure.
spot.
I'm kidding.
I know. Well, and let me tell everybody, Diane has been the best guest, and I've done many shows, right? Um, Not this particular show, but I've done live streaming and whatnot. Your preparation for this interview and what you gave me made my job like it was ridiculous. Usually
Thank
I'm poring over this for like 2 or 3 days and trying to think of the angles and whatever, and you just like delivered it with a bow. And I was just like, thank you,
Well, that's
Diane. This
great.
is
That's how I
incredible.
roll.
Yeah, I love how you roll. I love that. So, last question, and
Mhm.
then we'll start tying up. And thank you so much for your time
Oh
today. It's been a
gosh.
wonderful chat. Um, so, all right, you're on an elevator ride with a panic CEO,
Mhm,
right? Who can't fill roles. What's
mhm.
your 90-second fix?
Lean into mentoring, lean into things that grow people holistically, engage your leaders around that, and trust that that will play out in some ways that you can't necessarily anticipate that can actually be amazing.
Tell us where we can find you, how we can connect with you. What do you have going on?
Okay. I'm on LinkedIn, Diane Bailey Boulet. So feel free to reach out to me there. And then by email, Diane at scaleexcellence.com. And then if you're interested at all in my book, you can find it in many places. It's on Amazon as a paperback and Kindle version. And I know you can order it from independent booksellers and other book sellers as well. And it's available in 16 countries in English.
Wow, that's unreal. Like, and it's a lengthy book. I checked it out.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't, because sometimes you'll see people like, oh, I wrote a book, and you're like, oh, it's great. It's 80 pages, and it's a nice essay, right? I was
Mhm.
like, damn, Diane went in. I like, and
Well, okay. I'm going to share a few things so it doesn't seem so intimidating. It's 435 pages. However, it's broken up into bite sized chapters. So, what readers have told me is how much they've enjoyed being able to read it and go through
um,
it. And with my business consulting background and my expertise in business writing, I wrote the book at what's called the Flesh Kincaid grade level 8 through 10, which means it's very accessible to most people, in terms of readability if they have been in an 8th grade to 10th grade. And that's not about dumbing it down. It's actually about creating crisp, clear language that helps convey the meaning of the story without density and just overload.
I
So
love
there.
that. So it reads more like a chapter book
Yeah.
versus like a straight novel where you're like, oh my gosh, you know.
Yeah.
All these, I love that. I love that.
People tell me it reads
Um,
like a novel, but it's actually based on a lot of research, and I tried to bring an era to life in a very specific place and time, and the story of one child and the impact of a community and of people saying, "I see something in you," making all the difference in what was possible for him. And I'm here because of that. 80 odd years later, what people did in community with him and in partnership with him and in seeing him has made my life, just an incredible experience. And I'm thankful for that.
oh man, that's, one of the things that really resonated, well, not resonated, but um, made me feel good when you were talking about your father and just the fact that you wanted to, start that journey of writing a book about your father.
Mm,
Like, I never would have thought to do something like that. And, that tells me that you all had a good relationship. He taught you a lot, and that was heartwarming to hear.
yeah.
And so I commend you for doing something like that, because a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna write a book about this. I'm gonna write it." You're like, "I'm gonna write about my dad," and that's super cool.
Thank you. And I will say writing is very healing as well. So if you're a leader, anybody who's having, writing something can be incredibly healing. And there's, a lot of scientific basis in the fact that it has a strong ability to be a healing agent. And it certainly was for me. And my dad was a really, I would call a truly kind and Renaissance human being who did some astonishing things and taught me a lot. And I felt like he deserved to be known for the struggles he had that got him there. And I wanted to make sure that people understood that no one does it alone. That it is the effort of many people and the seeing and saying in a positive way, and sometimes not. That
Mm,
makes you have that fire to keep going and find your next paver stone to walk on.
mm. I love that. Diane, thank you so much for coming today and talking to me and waxing nostalgic on what it means to find overlooked talent.
Mhm.
I
Thank you,
really
Chuck. It's
appreciate it.
great. I am so grateful for this reconnection with you and this time today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
My guest today was Diane Bailey Boulet, published author, someone who walked down into a coal mine to do research, and mentor, coach, and all around good person and human being. Thank you so much, Diane. And that is it for us today on Work No Filter. Peace.
Thank you.